up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, we are in preview season part 3 tonight. We got the Big 12 on deck. The only year for now of a 14-team Big 12. But before we get there, some tough and weird breaking news that happened yesterday as we're recording this. So July 11th, we're recording July 10th. Northwestern fires Pat Fitzgerald. And, some news comes out of some hazing going on in the program. And initially it was a 2-week suspension. Then after the weekend, ends up he is out after 17 seasons at Northwestern. I couldn't believe it was that long. But, where does Northwestern go from here? I'm assuming interim coach for this season and then, look for a coach next season. Bad situation. And it's a bad situation at a school that hasn't won a lot of games.
Yeah, this is tough. I don't know if there's there's not just a blue sky. There's not hey, this is an easy to see path forward. I mean, Pat Fitzgerald's most recognizable person associated with Northwestern for the last couple of decades now, obviously being a player there and then now their best coach in history, and led them to a Big Ten West title, and
a Rose Bowl.
Other accolades that Northwestern does not typically enjoy. Now, granted, they've had, some poor seasons recently, but really that's where we expect them. So it's tough hearing, some off the field stuff like this happen. We don't obviously know all the details here and there, only what was reported. And, it's tough to make heads or tails of it because, it's just not our cup of tea to do that. So that being said, as far as the football operations of it, Jacob, losing your coach a couple weeks before media days
or 45 days of the season,
a month before, less than a month before practice starts. And then, like you said, 45 days before the season. It's what's your identity? What's your, what is your team thinking? Also, we got to think about roster attrition in this day and age with the transfer portal. All of those players are now eligible to transfer and immediately play. Granted, I don't think there's a ton that are coming to poach from that roster, but you got to expect that anybody who's worth their salt is going to get a look. And especially as you talk about camp casualties and stuff, if somebody gets hurt in the coming weeks as camps get started, that's when you could really start to see stuff happen. So really that's where the news is what the roster is going to look like for this season. Because if it gets too ripped apart, it could be tough sledding going forward, more so than just hiring a coach. Now, granted, being in the Big Ten is going to help them, and they're going to be able to find someone to take the job because they're going to make life-changing money just by nature of being in that conference. So
it's the Big Ten.
Someone will take the job. So we'll see how that materializes and everything like that. They'll probably get somebody that we even know. So it'll be, a good situation as far as that goes. But it's not the ideal spot to walk into. Definitely crazy. This kind of stuff doesn't happen. The coaching carousel we thought was done. And now more turns to it here in July.
A coach that someone mentioned, Brian Hartline, he to me is a coach that can wait out a big job. Is Northwestern a big enough job? I know it's a Big Ten job, but we'll see. I think he's gonna be a good head coach one day. Obviously he's 36, he's young, so
yeah,
we'll see. That'll be a fun name, but I think we got a while before that. I'm assuming interim coach. They haven't announced anything yet, but you're not getting a head coach for the start of the season. At least not a good one No one's making the jump right this second. Not one that is worth hiring long term.
Yeah, just be ahead on the game for whenever other coaches are being fired. You're the first one in line to try to snag somebody towards the end of the season.
Right. Let's turn the page. Let's talk some actual football. Talking Big 12 tonight. And as we did with the ACC and the Pac-12, which if you have not listened, be sure to go back and listen at the Extra Point Pod on YouTube. And then you can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you haven't listened, go ahead and listen to those. Our Pac-12 ones become pretty popular with talk a little USC. People have some strong opinions about USC on both sides. So be sure to go check those out. We're in the Big 12, Daniel. We're going to go in order of win total as we have. And the highest win total this year in the Big 12, you'll never guess, Daniel, it's Texas. And this is not the first time Texas has had the highest win total in the Big 12. Oklahoma's had it a bunch. Texas has been 1 or 2 for a long time, but they have not won this conference since 2009. I counted at least 5 other Big 12 teams have won the conference since Texas last won it. Daniel, we do our favorite segment every offseason called Who's Back? Is Texas back? They're the odds-on favorite to win the Big 12. Is this the season, the first time since 2009, they put it all together?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. It has to be.
It has to be.
If not, I mean, what are we doing here? Like, why go through all this? Texas has to be back. All right. We've gone through all these seasons of will they, this is the season. Okay. They've built to this, we're talking about this Big 12. This is the weird year of the Big 12, where the 2 departing teams have not left yet, and the 4 new teams are all in. So we got 14 teams in the Big 12. They've been used to having 10. This is just a weird situation in the interim. But Texas has so much talent. If you look at Athlon Sports, you and I both have a copy of that. They do the unit rankings as far as the Big 12 is concerned. Texas is number 1 in every unit ranking. They're the only team in all of Power 5 to be number 1 in every position in their conference. Now, granted, that doesn't necessarily have to mean a whole lot because your conference could be bad, but I think that's still a feat showing the depth across the board. I think that's the big takeaway there, is that they don't lack in one area where most places you're going to, whether that be losing somebody to the draft or just transfers in general, or you just didn't recruit well to that position. But I think, Jacob, I think Texas has the best 3 quarterbacks in the entire Big 12. I would take their 3, any one of their 3, and that would be obviously Quinn Ewers, Malik Murphy, and Arch Manning. I would take any one of them 3 above anybody else in the conference. And I wanted that to be a hot take when I said it 3 hours ago to my wife. And then now I'm like, this isn't a hot take. These are the best guys. Now, if you look at the All-American lists and things like that, you've got a couple other guys who have maybe had more production, like Jalen Daniels from Kansas or Dylan Gabriel at Oklahoma and stuff like that. But nonetheless, this team, top to bottom, is stacked. They've got 9 guys returning on offense, 9 starters, 6 guys returning on defense. But Jacob, they bring in the number 3 recruiting class this past off season, as well as several good key transfers. The best one, I think, is got to be A.D. Mitchell coming from Georgia. I mean, that can't be overstated. He was a 3-star coming into college, coming out of high school, and now as a transfer, he's listed as a 5-star. Some people will say, hey, that's just a ranking. That's just a, arbitrary, but that's perception. This guy outplayed his ranking and is transferring to Texas, which is his home state. He's coming home. He's got family here, and that was probably the big draw, along with probably NIL. But I mean, to have a player like that with Xavier Worthy on the other side, I mean, they're going to be able to throw the ball around. The line of scrimmage is going to be very special. They've got all 5 starters on offensive line returning. That's huge continuity, taking that step forward. This is one of the best coaching staffs in all of football, in all of college football. And Sarkisian still calling plays. I mean, that's just icing on the cake. I think he's gonna be great there. Looking at the schedule, which is where we're gonna determine their over under, which I don't know if we've said it. Is it
9.5.
9.5? Okay. I've got them going over. Obviously they have a tough game at Alabama. They return that
Week
trip.
2. Shout out.
Week 2. But I would also argue that Alabama, which we'll talk about the SEC later, but Alabama has a tough matchup with Texas coming to town because Alabama's breaking in a new starting quarterback. They've got a lot of issues. I think if the roles were reversed and Texas was breaking in a lot of new players, Alabama was established. This is a big brand game, but everybody's just snoozing on it because they're not Alabama's just going to roll them over. The reverse of that, Texas having a bunch of players coming back, Alabama breaking in new players. I mean, this is must-watch TV. It's a 7 p.m. kick. We're going to be all over that. But that game, obviously, the Red River shootout, Red River rivalry, whatever we want to call it, Oak versus Oklahoma. That's going to be a tough game. But you're adding obviously these schools that are just joining with BYU and teams of that nature. But look in Houston. I don't look at a game on here short of the Alabama game that they shouldn't win by multiple scores. I'll say that at least 10 points. And that gives me confidence that they're going to go over 9.5. And I want to say by a lot. I think they could be an 11-win team. But I'm very high on Texas. And this is with me trying to temper that excitement from my initial excitement when did you buy stock in them when we did our stock up, stock down? I was trying so hard to sell as much stock as possible.
Yeah.
After looking at it, there's no way, man. This team is going to be good. I think they're a bona fide team that's going to be, they're going to be there. So they're going to be in the Big 12 championship. Let's just say that.
In the Big 12 championship.
We don't want to give too much away. In the Big 12 championship, I'm confident they will be.
Daniel, what if I told you that Texas's defense was better than their offense last year? I think everyone looks at Texas and sees Sark and was like, yeah, the offense is good, but what about the defense? And I think you're just like looking at offensive coaches and thinking like Lincoln Riley, Steve Sarkisian must be the same story. No, Texas had a top 15 defense in college football last year, and that's what kept them from falling, out of whack whenever years went down last year and, wasn't healthy for the remainder of the year. All 4 of their losses last year were by 1 score. They had 2 1-score wins. So kind of what, stuff we've talked about with other teams, flip the luck of 1-score games or even split them. And Texas was a better team than their record last year. Obviously, power ratings, loved them last year. This is a top 10 team, power rated last year. Texas, I just want to go up and down here because obviously when we did our stock up, stock down episode, I bought stock in Texas. I'm a big believer in this football team. Quarterback, you mentioned it. I think this might be the hot take. I think Texas is the best quarterback room in the country. And I think that because you have to look top to bottom, obviously Caleb Williams is far and above the best quarterback in the country. And I think they have a phenomenal backup, Malachi Nelson, but Texas is 3 deep with like elite players. So I don't see USC as being 3 deep. LSU, I think you can put up there in that list. Georgia, I think you can put up there in that list. But I take Texas over any of them. Wide receiver room, I think, is going to be top 3 in the country, I will say. Ohio State's in the league of their own. I think LSU and Texas can fight for that number 2 spot. Sarkisian has told people close to him that he feels like the closest to the 2019 room that he had at Alabama. which had, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. He's got the best tight end in the conference in Jatavian Sanders. Dude, this offensive line, you mentioned it. This was the class of 2022. It was the highest rated offensive line class in the country. 3 of those guys started as freshmen. They're now all sophomores. Kelvin Banks is as NFL ready as I've seen a freshman last year playing left tackle. He is violent on the line of scrimmage. He's a sophomore returning at left tackle. He's phenomenal. Like I said, the defensive side of the ball was more consistent and better last year at Texas. I fully expect this to be a top 10, if not top 5 offense in the country. I think Sark's the best play caller in the country. Then you look at Texas's defense going into this year. Dude, they can have a top 15 defense again. What does Texas look like with a top 10 offense and a top 15 defense? They're going to look like a top 7 team in the country. And when they roll into Alabama in week 2, that's a game that everybody's going to have their eyes on. I don't think that college football is ready for a world where Texas beats Alabama in week 2. Because number one, Texas fans are going to be relentless. Insufferable. Similar to how Georgia fans have been for the last 2 years after, 40 years of not being able to say much. So they will be insufferable. But are we ready for that? Are we ready for Sark to beat Alabama in week 2? I don't know if they will. I'm just saying that point spread's not going to be double digits. That's going to be a single-digit point spread.
Take it to another level, Jacob. If Texas is able to topple Alabama before joining the SEC, that's the narrative that's going to drive the whole world. So, this is one of those games. This is one of those games you're going to know where you were when, at least before the game. We could get to the game and it's a blowout one way or the other. If it's a blowout by Alabama, this becomes a non-story. We just forget about Texas.
And everyone goes, oh, wow, Alabama, they're back.
If it's an epic game, or if Texas wins, if it's an epic game and Alabama wins slightly, or if Texas wins at all, and especially if they win by a lot, then this game goes down in college football history as potentially a turning point. But if nothing else, it's a marker for people's memories as to what happened. So it's much bigger than just a football game this year.
Oh yeah. Like I said, the defense, their defensive line is deep. Their linebackers, Anthony Hill is a true freshman. He's probably going to start, and he was a 5-star coming into this year. They're going to play him very free. They're going to like to move him around. They did that in the spring a good bit, and he's an inside linebacker, but he's a really good pass rusher, and so they're going to kind of play him as this star kind of player, as a kind of a jack linebacker. The secondary is probably going to be the best in the Big 12. You look up and down this roster, and look, I know it's been since 2009 since Texas won the Big 12. I'm just telling you, this is the year that Texas will go into the Big 12 championship game as the regular season Big 12 champ. I think Texas, the win total is at 9.5. I think Texas is going to go 11-1, and that's with Alabama on the schedule. And here's the thing: Texas and Oklahoma have the same win total number at 9.5, and Texas has Bama on the schedule. That tells you what Vegas thinks of Texas too. This is juice to the over. This is a team that I'm buying all the hype in. Give me all the stock you want to sell. And you can go ahead and be in the comments. You can go and tweet us and talk about what Texas has done and hasn't done in the last decade or so. It's not going to matter. This is year 3 of Steve Sarkisian. We've seen a lot of good year 3s in coaches. Most recent ones, Mike Norvell. We saw that Florida State finally popped in year 3. I think year 3 with Sark, he's got his team that he's been waiting on. And I think they, have a phenomenal season this year and go into the SEC next year with a lot of momentum on their side. So I'm excited to watch this because I love I'm definitely biased towards big brands, Daniel. I just love when big brands are performing well on the biggest stage. It's fun. Who doesn't want to see an epic matchup between Texas and Alabama in week 2? I hope it's 52-48. You know what I mean? Like I just hope it's or 35-31. Doesn't matter, but I hope it's epic.
To quote Tim Riggins, let's reach up and touch God, boys.
That's
Texas
right.
forever. So
You and I both on the over for Texas. Love it. Buying all the stock. Hook 'em horns. Daniel, let's talk about the other team tied with Texas as far as win total goes, but not the favorite in the Big 12. Oklahoma got year 2 of Brent Venables, 9.5 win total. Georgia got taken off the schedule, so easier schedule for Oklahoma. What are you thinking about the Sooners?
yeah, this team vastly underperformed last year, and most people know that. Um, Year of transition, you go from offensive coach to a defensive coach. Um, I think several maybe pitched this as being a seamless transition when it was a little more than that. At 9.5 wins, I think people realize that this Oklahoma brand, this Oklahoma team, will rise back up. Brent Venables in his second year, I think, really does take a good step forward. He has been so ingrained as a big time college football defensive coordinator that I do think that there is some level of detachment you have to go through that is simply not possible until you have sat in the chair. So I think that will happen. I think obviously they have a ton of trust in just Jeff Lebby. I think that Ted Roof being more of a senior guy on that defensive coordinator. I think that while Venables will have his hands all over the defense, I think that he will be able to delegate a little bit better. And he's got pressure on him in this season, like very similar to Texas, how they're both looking forward to the SEC and how that's coming. I think he knows I've got to get some wins this year and prove ultimately that I am worthy of this seat, because it is a historic seat. It is a prestigious chair to be in, and is being head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners. You go from Bob Stoops, who held it, for so long, to Lincoln Riley basically being the most seamless transition we've ever seen, and really taking them to that next level where they are getting in the college football playoff consistently. Maybe not advancing like most people would hope that they would, but nonetheless, I mean, they are in the conversation. That OU always had, a single digit next to it under Lincoln Riley, and then, many of the years under Bob Stoops. So I think most Oklahoma fans would relax on Venables if he could get to 10 wins this year. I think that is a very I think it's an attainable goal, but I think it's a good goal for them. I think that going from 6 wins last year, that was a tough one. Obviously, 6-6 in the regular season, lose the bowl game to Florida State. That Florida State team was a buzzsaw. I think a lot of people were losing to Florida State at the end of the year. It was a phenomenal game. All that to be said, this year the schedule lightens up a little bit. They do have, some of these teams that have been added to the Big 12 going to play at Cincinnati this year, playing UCF, which that'll be kind of an interesting dynamic because of Jeff Lebby, because of Dylan Gabriel. That game's at home. I'm interested to see if Gabriel plays the whole season as the starter. Jackson Arnold coming in, 5-star freshman, early enrollee. Very, very important to this program going forward. I don't think that he sits around and waits his opportunity. I think he takes his opportunity. I would, if I was a betting man, I would guess that Arnold takes over the starting job before the end of the year. And it may not be 100% performance based. Gabriel has been known to get injured. He runs around a lot. He's just that body type. It's tough. And I think this system is going to be built more for Arnold to succeed. They got a transfer from Texas at receiver in the transfer portal. I think that's going to lead to them That Brennan Thompson, he's a 4-star. He's already enrolled. So they've got several guys who are coming in. I think that can play. 7 guys returning on defense. A couple starters on the offensive line coming back. Andrew Rame, who he's at center. He's going to be on the Remington watch list. He's one of the best centers in college football. All that to be said, I like them to go over 9.5 slightly. Looking through their schedule, I think that Texas is a loss, but by and large, I think that they're going to be favored in a lot of these games, even if it's by single digits. So I'm going to lean to the over slightly. I like them at 10-2. I like them to lose to Texas, and then probably one other team that'll be, a question mark, a coin flip. But Oklahoma will have a good bounce back year, and people will remember that, the Sooners are the class of the Big 12, and we'll see a rematch of Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game.
You'd love to see it. I'm also going to go slightly over here. I think 10-2 is where Oklahoma lands. The defense has to be better. This defense ranked 70th in SC Plus last year. I think that would be Venables' worst power rated defense that he's ever coached. I have to believe that Brent Venables is going to field a competent defense this year. 100% have to believe that. They bring in a phenomenal recruiting class. You mentioned ranked 4th in the country, not the Big 12, like 4th in the country. And those are heights that they did not reach under Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. And I'm with you in that quarterback I'm not worried about because Jackson Arnold's right there. This is the Elite 11 MVP. Steve Wiltfong actually called him the best quarterback in the country of this past cycle. They got him and kept him in their class when several other schools wanted him. So that's a huge get. You get back Austin Stogner as well. He started his career at Oklahoma, transferred to South Carolina with Spencer Rattler. He's now back at tight end. That's a big get out of the portal. Daniel, I just have to believe that Brent Venables is going to field a better defense this year. And if this is a team that's going to have a top 40 defense, like at minimum, a top 40 defense, Daniel, this was an offense last year that was a top 10 offense in the country. SP plus at the end of the year. So what does that look like when your defense is like twice as good as it was last year? And the offense, even if it's the same, you're looking at an Oklahoma team that doesn't underperform, that plays to their talent level, that plays to their standard at Oklahoma, which is being on top of the Big 12, playing for Big 12 championships, winning Big 12 championships, as they have for the better part of 3 decades. Like, Oklahoma is the team that has run this conference. And in their last year in the Big 12, I am going to pick Oklahoma to go 10-2 to play for the Big 12 championship. And how miserable it must be for the rest of the Big 12 to watch the 2 teams leaving play for a Big 12 championship on their way out. One of them take it home and, take their ball and go home. So we'll see. We could be totally wrong, but you and I both picking Texas and Oklahoma in a rematch in the Big 12 title game. They're primed for a bounce back year. So I'm excited to watch Oklahoma this year. Excited to see Venables' defense look more like a Venables defense. So I'm excited to see that come to fruition this year. Next on our win total is Kansas State. This is the defending Big 12 champion. That's right, not TCU. Kansas State beat TCU in the Big 12 championship. Of course, TCU already had that 12-0 regular season record. They went on to play for the college football playoff, but Kansas State, they won the conference last year, but when they were healthy last year, they definitely looked like the best team in the Big 12 last year. So I felt like that was a deserving Big 12 championship. Daniel, heading into this year, their win total is set at exactly 8, even 8. Shout out to the cowards for giving us an even number. There's several even numbers on here, actually. How are you feeling about the defending Big 12 champion Wildcats?
So this team's built different. All right. I think that as we go through the Big 12, we'll start to see a theme, but this is the last team that I think has the ceiling of winning the Big 12 this year. So there's 3 teams I think could win Big 12: Texas, OU, and Kansas State. And I think that Kansas State, they're very different than those top 2. Those top 2 finished in the top 4 in recruiting this year. Kansas State finished at 33. They had 3 4-star recruits come in, and that was, that's what they're looking at. They don't have the type of talent, but they develop their talent over the course of, of several years. And looking at obviously Chris Kleiman, his days at North Dakota State, once he gets his system in place, which that's been the case, and you saw it start to happen last year. He started early by beating teams he shouldn't have. Last year, winning the Big 12. So Colin Klein, really a rising star at offensive coordinator, the former quarterback for Kansas State. I really like what these two have going on. Offensive line, return all 5 starters. 4 of them are seniors, and then they have a junior. I mean, this is the year for them to just push people around. It starts with the line of scrimmage. They're obviously bringing back their quarterback, Will Howard, who played a decent amount of the year last year and had several good games, especially against TCU both times. So I'm high on him. I'm high on the offensive line. I think that's a great place to start for them. Offensively, they return 7 starters, defensively 5 starters. You also look at, this offensive line is so good. They've got guys in the portal that are 4 stars that are leaving to go to Washington. So that should tell you all you need to know about this offensive line, that they are built, they're deep. Looking at the schedule, their non-conference is Southeast Missouri State, Troy, and at Missouri. They played Missouri last year. I actually picked Missouri to beat Kansas State before the season last year. Kansas State put 40 on them. They won 40-12. That was a big eye-opener for me. And I think that Kansas State plays more of an SEC brand of football than what Missouri does, at least for what the perception is from the outside of what SEC football is. I think Kansas State much better on the offensive line and on the defensive line. They're just tougher. They know how to win in a box. They can win close games, and they've got the advantage at quarterback in most every Saturday when you look up and down their schedule. Now, do I think that they're going to probably lose 3 games, potentially 4 games? Yeah, I think they could go 8-4. I think that's probably the most likely, which is why their number is at 8. But I'm going to not be a coward. I'm going to go over. I'm going to say they go 9-3 this year. I think they lose 3 games. I think it's Texas and OU. Well, actually, do they even play Oklahoma?
They do not.
They miss Oklahoma. Well, they play Oklahoma State. So, and then there's going to be something else happen. So I'm going to stick with 3 losses, 9-3 for the Wildcats. But they follow up having a 10-win season with a 9-win season. That's nothing to snuff at. And then they're right there in the conversation for that Big 12, the Big 12 championship.
Chris Kleiman is a beacon of consistency. He has won at every level he's been at. I know you're a big fan, Daniel, of, is it Beta Rank that does the coach rating index, or no, CFP Matrix?
Yeah.
David Bartu on Twitter at CFP Matrix. Great follow, but they have a coach rating index. I'm not going to try to explain it, but they have a lot of stats to grade coaches on the same scale based on a lot of different factors. And, 24/7 Sports has been kind of pulling them in to do and using their rankings a lot recently. And so article came out today, actually, of the all Big 12 coaches based on those ratings. Chris Kleiman, highest rated head coach in the Big 12. Offensive line coach, Connor Riley, highest rated offensive line coach in the Big 12. Defensive backs coach, Joe Kleiderman, the backs coach. So, and that's tied for most coaches on this first team. So Kansas State's got a great coaching staff. This is the first year you've seen them recruit at a much higher level than Kansas State typically has recruited. They were 33rd in the composite, which when I say 33, we talk about a lot of teams being, top 10. We don't talk about a lot of teams recruiting in the 30s, but, Kansas State is not a top, 30 recruiting school. This is a school that typically recruits in the 50s and 60s, and they're recruiting better now. So like Kleiman's even adjusting to, being in FBS and like being the Big 12 and recruiting better. So Will Howard is back, and he was the best quarterback on the roster last year. And he's a big reason why they won the Big 12 championship. He is the much better passer. I think a full season with him, you're going to see an improvement. An improvement on the field does not always guarantee an improvement in the win-loss column. I'm going to be a coward and say push. I would lean, my numbers say lean under. My heart says lean over. But I liked him at 8-4. I think that's a really, really good number. On the schedule, you did have to go to Texas, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, and Kansas, and Missouri. Out of conference road game. Make that schedule pretty tough. So I think 8's a really good win total. I'm going to go 8-4 for the Wildcats. All right, let's go to our I almost said defending Big 12 champs. Nope. But hey, the defending Fiesta Bowl champs, the first Big 12 team to get a college football playoff win, the TCU Horned Frogs. TCU, after going 12-0, their win total, Daniel, is set at 7.5. It seems too low. How do you feel the Horned Frogs?
Yeah, with TCU, them going from last year, which was lightning in a bottle, it was magic. They had several players go to the NFL. They had several, that got drafted. They had a lot of one score games or near losses that ended up being wins. But Sonny Dykes taking over this team for the first year, I mean, he did a remarkable job. I think they're a good team. I think that they caught some breaks, and then they had some belief in guys, and they had some really good players down the stretch that could get them over the hump in the Big 12, which ultimately they lost the championship, but they were able to still make the playoff because of the superb regular season that they had. Looking at this, they've lost. They only have 3 returning starters on offense, 4 if you count the quarterback, which I don't because he didn't start all year. He started at the beginning of the year and then got hurt. Chandler Morris, who was with Sonny Dykes at SMU and transferred with him. They've got 8 guys returning on defense, so I am interested to see, if they're able to have a good defensive unit. They've been known for defense over the years with Gary Patterson. Last year, for the Big 12, they were pretty good. So this is something to keep in mind. Bringing in Kendall Briles, replacing Garrett Riley as offensive coordinator, how much is that going to matter? I know that Briles name really doesn't sit well with a lot of TCU people because of their rivalry with Baylor. So that's something that's interesting to me. But I do think they take a step back. I think this is the start of, what we talked about with the Pac-12, Jacob. They are the best upper middle class in all of college football. Well, for the Big 12, I think they have the largest working class of all of college football. These next several teams are all part of the working class. They all have good players that can be productive, but they're going to cannibalize each other, and they're not going to, they may make a bowl game, but they're not going to amount to anything beyond that. They're not going to be challenging for a Big 12 championship. That's why I had the line end with Kansas State. I think that going through this schedule with this roster, I think that they've got, Colorado and Nichols from out of conference, as well as SMU, which they have every year. So not super tough. I think SMU is kind of a coin toss, but they play Texas, they play at Oklahoma, they play at Iowa State, which that's not going to be easy either. At Kansas State, all of those I really see being losses. You're really going to start to see some of these other teams that are new to the conference, like BYU and Houston. Houston is really going to be trying to prove themselves as we get into the Big 12. They've been wanting to be part of it for a long time. they're going to try to assert themselves. There's going to be kind of a jockeying for position as, there's, the underlying dynamic of Texas and Oklahoma leaving, everybody trying to see who the next best team is. I think that's going to be obviously Kansas State, but you have all these Texas teams that are trying to see who's who and what's what. So I have them. What was our win total? 8
7
or
and a half.
7.5? I have them going slightly under that, 7-5.
7 and
7-5 for
5.
TCU.
TCU is a team I sold stock in on our stocks episode, and it was simple. They won 6 one-score games, and there is an amount of luck in that, right? Like your one-score games, you should probably split. So expectation has to change a little bit. They lost a ton off that team. They had like 9 draft picks, the NFL off that team.
Yeah.
A lot of NFL talent. They did catch lightning in a bottle. I don't think that means they were frauds, though. So I sold stock on this team. I have since come back to the middle, so much so that I'm going to go over the win total here. Ooh. I'm going to go 8-4. And again, this might seem like a fall back to earth, but last year was special. Enjoy that if you're a TCU fan. That doesn't happen very often. You deserve all the praise for last year's season. It was an incredible run, and they were a deserving team of being in the playoff, and obviously to get there and then to win a game. Only Big 12 team to do that. Like, no one can take that away from you guys. There's a reason that win total 7.5. Number one, this schedule is pretty brutal. As far as Big 12 schedules go, they did have 5 road games, with a 9-game conference schedule. Some teams get 4 road games, some teams get 5. So TCU does get 5. They also play, by my count, if you take the top 6 teams in the Big 12, TCU plays the other 5, including TCU in that top 6, but you play the other 5, and let's see, 1, 2, 3 of them are on the road. So really, really tough schedule. But I do think that Chandler Morris, of course, he won the starting job last offseason for quarterback. So you get some continuity at quarterback. I think that the running back room's strong. I just trust Sonny Dykes so much so that I'm going to go slightly over the win total. I think 8-4 seems like a pretty good slot for TCU. And honestly, like 8-4 is a great year at TCU, especially knowing that the Big 12 is changing and you get Texas and OU off the schedule next year. And I know if you're a TCU fan, you're going to say, well, we beat them last year. You did beat them last year. We'll see what happens this year. But again, TCU is one of these teams that can run the new Big 12. So 8-4 with this tough schedule, I think is a great year on a year where it's a rebuilding year, right? Again, you lost 9 NFL draft picks, highest in school history. This is a rebuilding year, but to go over the win total in your rebuilding year, that's me believing in TCU, believing in this coaching staff that they're building something long-term and not just a flash in the pan. So I'm going 8-4 for TCU. Daniel, also a 7.5 win total is Texas Tech. The Red Raiders coming off of an 8-5 season and Joey McGuire's second year. This guy loves Texas Tech, man, and I think he's building something special. They're recruiting very well. They beat Texas. They beat Texas last year. They beat Oklahoma last year. So they beat those big 2 last year on the schedule. Their win total 8-5 last year, set at 7.5 for this season. How do you feel about the Red Raiders, man?
Yeah, this is a team that you certainly have to pay attention to. They're not just a pushover, and it's like a lot of these teams that I've got in this working class of the Big 12. I think that they are they're going to be good in certain areas. They may be deficient in others. All this to be said, Tyler Shuck, we know him from his time at Oregon, where he was the starter on and off, and then transfers down. He was injured a little bit last year, played a little bit. He's going to come into the season as a starter. I'm interested to see if he's able to take the job and run with it and have a full season of being healthy and being productive. He's a very talented guy. So going from an 8-win team last year Can they improve upon it? I'm looking at a few transfers that they have come in on defense. Steve Linton from Syracuse, as well as CJ Baskerfield from San Diego State. Just a couple of guys to kind of shore up that side of the ball. They've got 8 guys returning on offense, 6 guys on defense. So production is going to be there as far as what they need to do what they need to do. Now, they get Oregon in the non-conference. That's going to hurt because I think Oregon should come in and win that game, but they also have Wyoming and Tarleton State. So good chance at beating those, but they have Texas on the schedule. They've got they're at BYU this year, at Baylor. I think those are all very tough games. At West Virginia, that just traveling for that game, I think it's going to be tough, but they don't play Oklahoma. So that makes me feel a little bit better. This one's at 7-5 as well, or 7.5 as well.
Half, yep.
So I have them. I have them as well at 7-5, slightly under. So I think this is going to be a little bit of a round robin situation, losing to some of these teams. I think they've got several losable games, but at Texas, at Kansas, at BYU, at Baylor, at home against Kansas State. So there's enough blood in the water there that I think that the Red Raiders will lose about 5 games, but still a really good season, winning 7 games against this schedule.
So Texas Tech was a team last year that had an offense that was a top 20 offense in the country. Defense, not so much. This is like an 80th or so defense. Defense, you mentioned that they bring in some transfers on defense to kind of overhaul, get some talent in, top-end talent in on defense. This is a team that ranks top 40 in returning production, including top 10 in offensive returning production to that team that was a top 20 offense already. They were 8-0 when Tyler Shuck started last year and was healthy. When he wasn't healthy, they lost 5 games. And I think that's significant. This is a team that I think has the second best receiver room in the Big 12 behind Texas. I expect this offense to run on some people, Daniel. And I think in the Big 12 this year, when I don't see a lot of elite defenses, this is a team that has the capability to not only surprise and show up, but win some games that they shouldn't. And I'm just saying that Oregon week 2, I know Dan Lanning's fixing that defense, and you and I are big believers in Oregon. Obviously, I picked them to play for the Pac-12 championship, but I don't think that's a game Oregon needs to take lightly in week 2 because they've got some receivers that can run on that secondary, and the secondary was an issue at Oregon last year. I'm not circling that as a for sure win for Oregon coming into the season. It's a home game for Texas Tech. That's a matchup in week 2. It's going to go under the radar because of Texas and Alabama week 2, but that's a game I'm going to be watching. Daniel, I have this team going over the win total. I have Texas Tech going 9-3 this next year. Big believer in what Joey McGuire's building. They are hot on the recruiting trail right now, including they're trending for some 4- and 5-star prospects. This is not just, they've got some, kid no one's heard of in West Texas that was a 3-star that, should be rated higher. No, they're contending for top-level talent in Texas right now. And I think it's because of the momentum that they built last year that they're going to build on this year. I'm picking Texas Tech to go 9-3. Again, they've got only they have 5 road games. I counted it wrong with my head. But the weird road game at Wyoming, that's a weird one. But like your road games being at West Virginia, that's just long travel. But like at Kansas, at Baylor, these aren't really like tough road environments. I believe in this team. Red Raiders 9-3. It's kind of my like surprise team here in the Big 12. I like Texas Tech heading into the season. I mean, again, that offense brings everybody back to a top 20 offense in college football last year. So excited to see what Joey and the Red Raiders can do. All right, Daniel, here we go. We're at team number 6. We've made it to a new team. So a new team in the Big 12 has a top 6 win total. UCF has a win total of 7. First year in the Big 12. Gus Malzahn back as a Power 5 head coach. Can UCF eclipse their win total in year one in the new conference?
Yes, I think they can. I am actually, I mean, I'm number one fan of the John Rice Plumlee fan club, but I think they've built this thing the right way. Several, returning starters on offense. They've got some transfers on the offensive line as well. But I think they're going to be solid there. Bringing in a couple of transfer quarterbacks as backups, but Gunnar Smith from South Florida, as well as Charlotte's quarterback Xavier Williams, who I think is going to be a good number two behind Reese Plumlee, be the eventual starter next year. But defensively, which has always been kind of the surprise for me, since I think Derek LeBlanc from Ohio or from Oklahoma, excuse me, is transferring in a 4-star, as well as Ryan Davis from Georgia at linebacker is transferring in, and he's a former 4-star as well. So you've just got some guys that have played some major college football before. They're going to come in, be ready to go. They're not going to be surprised by this level of competition, and you're going to be ready to roll. I think having a returning starting quarterback is very important. Plumlee is a returning leader, passing and rushing. He rushed for over 800 yards last year and 11 touchdowns, 2,500 yards passing, 14 touchdowns through the air. So definitely a must. Gus Malzahn style quarterback. So we'll see how this goes going forward. But looking at the schedule, Kent State at Boise, that will be a little bit tough. At home against Villanova, those are their non-conference, but they missed Texas this year. So I am confident in them going. It's 6.5 is the win total.
7 flat.
7.
Cowards.
Okay. I'm going over. I'll go 8-4 with UCF.
I'm also going 8-4. I just believe, number one, they're the most ready-made team this season to be in the Big 12 of the new teams. Like UCF is a team that has been at the top of the American for 6 years now. They've been ready to compete with the midfield in the Big 12. And I think that's exactly what they're going to do this year is compete with the midfield in the Big 12 and be at that, I say like tier 2 in the Big 12. So be playing with and contending with those teams. The road trip to Boise, Boise's not what it used to be as far as like a group of 5 team. They do have 5 road games in conference, which, hey, welcome to the Big 12. You got 5 road games. Like you said, they avoid Texas. They avoid TCU on the schedule. They do go at Oklahoma after a bye, though. But yeah, UCF, I like to go over the win total as well. I got them at 8-4 and year one in the Big 12. Big believer in Gus Malzahn having a running back playing quarterback. So big believer in that. So I love JRP, man. All right. Next, Baylor, 6.5. Daniel, without looking, how many years has Aranda been at Baylor?
3, 4.
This is year 4, which I was like, oh man, I feel like we were just talking about him. I thought he won the conference in his first year or something. Year 4 for Dave Aranda. Kind of been up and down, man. I mean, they go 2-7 in 2020. 2021, they go 12-2, win the conference. Last year, 6-7. I mean, where are you pegging the Bears this year? Win totals at 6.5.
Yeah, they're not returning a lot. So I won't, I don't think they're going to be, it'll be some sort of a team that's going to have to learn as they go. They draw Utah this year. That's going to be tough. Even though they get them at home, they do play Texas. So it's going to be a tough one. They get to miss Oklahoma this year. And it's just I'm not sold on them this year. I don't think they're going to have like the bottom fall out, but I'm not expecting anything phenomenal. I have them at 6-6 this year.
6-6. I'm going to go gonna say slightly over. I'm gonna go a little bit higher than slightly over. I got them at 8-4. I think the schedule sets up nice in that your toughest run is early. You got Texas at UCF, Texas Tech, like back to back to back. That's your toughest run because then you got at Cincinnati. We're going to talk about them after a bye, and Cincinnati's not off of a bye. Iowa State at home. Houston, you got at Kansas State at TCU, then you get West Virginia to end the year. I think the schedule sets up nice for them this year. Again, one of these teams that only plays 4 road games in the Big 12. Look, they had bad season, good season, bad season, bounce back, good season for Aranda in year 4. So I think Aranda's a good coach. Expect the defense to play pretty well this year. I like Shapen as a quarterback. I'm going to go over for Baylor 8-4. And you said 6-6. All right. Next, Daniel, Iowa State. The Cyclones that, were everyone's darling, like 2020 and 2021, heading into the season of, hey, this team's going to contend for a Big 12 championship. They played for it 1 year, never won it. Matt Campbell, is looked at, maybe still is like this, top of the coaching board if these big jobs come available. Go 4-8 last year. Their win total set at 6 this year. Where are you picking Iowa State?
Yeah, I mean, returning a ton. They're returning 8 guys on offense, 7 on defense. Returning your quarterback, Hunter Deckers, over 3,000 yards last year, 19 touchdowns. He did have a lot of interceptions. He had 14 interceptions. So that led to several losses, obviously. So definitely need to see an improvement there. If not, Rocco Beck may be taking over at quarterback. So look for that. Bringing in Arlen Harris from Stanford as a backup running back. I think part of that room, and Zach Lovett at linebacker will be a nice fit. He's coming in from Missouri, so excited to see those guys kind of assimilate onto this team. But I've got them going. Let's see here, going through their. I think they're going to lose to Iowa this year. Because Iowa's at least elite on defense. We'll see what they end up doing on offense with Cade McNamara, but I think they're going to take care of them. They get Oklahoma and Texas and at Kansas State. I mean, they play the 3 best teams in the Big 12 this year. I've got them going 6-6.
This is a tough schedule. I think 6 is a good win total. I mean, literally from week 3 on, every other week they just go road home, road home, road home. That weird one at Ohio. Then I talked about this on a couple of other picks episodes and preview episodes, but I kind of like going through the schedule and giving everyone either a full win, like a guaranteed win, guaranteed loss, quarter win, half win, 3/4 of a win. Anyway, I get to like 5.75 for Iowa State whenever I do that. So I lean under, but I'll be a coward too and I'm going to go 6-6 for Iowa State. This should be a good enough defense that gets them to 6 wins in the conference. Offense, we'll see. You mentioned Decker threw a lot of balls to the other team last year, but this defense should be good enough to get them to a bowl game, which, look, 6-6 should be pretty normal for Iowa State, and that should be a pretty good season. So Iowa being on the schedule every year doesn't help you. 6-6, where I'm going for Iowa State as well. All right, Daniel, Kansas started 5-0 last year, and then almost didn't make a bowl game after that. But hey, college game, they got to go. That was much deserved. Lance Leipold has done an incredible job at Kansas. Their win total after going 6-7 last year, set at 6. What was their win total last year? Dude, I want to set. We both took the under. I know.
Oh yeah,
that.
no, it was like 3.5.
I think it was 3.5.
Is it 3.5 or 2.5? It was low because we talked about it in the ACC show, but Duke was very similar, and Duke and Kansas playing. We were like, this is for the over. they're going to play each other, and that's what it's going to be for. And both of them were undefeated by the time they played.
So their win total set at 6. How do you feel about Kansas?
Yeah, I like it. They do play Illinois out of conference this year, so I don't feel great about that. I think Illinois is going to be pretty good. I like what they're doing up there. So they get them at home. Um, they also they play at Texas. They do get Oklahoma on the schedule. Um, I like that they play Missouri State and at Nevada. I think they'll be able to take care of those two games. But it's going to be tough. They have a lot of players come back, 10 returning starters on offense. And, obviously we saw Jalen Daniels at quarterback as well as Jason Bean, their backup. Both have pretty good showings. They have 1,000-yard rusher in Devin Neal coming back at running back. So a lot of production coming back. I it's tough because of how way they finished the year last year with 4 straight losses, losing what was it, seven out of their last 8 games. So big time collapse, but being able to go to a bowl game, very impressive regardless. The team being a respectable team, fun to watch. People were finding that game more often than not. So I think that they're going to be an interesting team this year. It's tough for me to go over, 6 wins. I think that that's really where they're going to live this year. And I think that that shouldn't be a negative thing. I think that going 6 wins is a good thing, and that going to another bowl game, stacking some bowl games on one another, that's how you become a good program, because you get those extra practices at the end of the year. I think Kansas is going to they're going to win 6 games. I think they're going to go to a bowl game, potentially to win their 7th game. Finish the season better than they did last year. But yeah, it's tough. At least some of their tough games are split up this year instead of all being back to back. So we will see how things go. But I like Kansas to do a little better than they did, or to finish the season better, but to go 6-6 as well.
I'm also going to push here and go 6-6. Kansas, again, the schedule isn't. I mean, it's never nice when you're Kansas, but this is a team that brings back a quarterback that good chance going to be voted preseason like Big 12 first team in Jalen Daniels. And when he was healthy, they looked really good last year. Also of note, Kansas does have new football uniforms. No longer has the silly font. I do think that Kansas is a little too big across the chest. Just my take, but block numbers, a much cleaner look, simple stripes. I don't think we're going to see random like red jersey, blue pants combos. That's got to go. So that's a good thing for Kansas. I almost went over just because the uniforms are better.
Does it add a half game to
easy
their?
at least half a game? So lean over, but I'll push and go 6-6 with Kansas. Yeah, easily half a game. Can't wait to see better pictures of the uniforms and see them on the field. That'll be nice to see. All right, the third of our trio of 6-win teams for the win total, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State for a long time was like this 8-4 to 10-2 type team in the Big 12. Their win total set at 6 now. Where are you going with the Cowboys?
Yeah, Spencer Sanders has left, and he is still playing college football somehow.
Believe it or not.
We'll cover him maybe a little bit when we talk SEC, because he is with Ole Miss now. That being said, bringing in Alan Bowman, who I'm not mistaken is a Texas Tech transfer, who
By way of Michigan. He went to Michigan last year. Yep. This is his second stop.
These next 2 years, I think, of the last couple of years we have of the COVID folks that have all the extra eligibility and everything. It's going to be crazy for a while with transfer portal, but it's been a little extra crazy with all these extra years of eligibility. All that to be said, I mean, Mike Gundy still being there is always a plus, but they returned 6 starters on offense, only 2 on defense. I just don't have a lot of confidence they're going to be very good. Alan Bowman has not really cut it anywhere he's been. One thing, at least, about Spencer Sanders was he was extremely productive, even if he turned the ball over. So you're losing that. Um, yeah, they just don't have a lot coming back. They play at Arizona State as one of their non-conference games. They get Central Arkansas and South Alabama, so I feel good about those. But as far as their schedule, I mean, they get to miss Texas on as part of the Big 12 schedule, but I still don't think that really lends too well for them, regardless of if they played them or not. I have them at 5-7. I think it's going to be kind of a tough year for them. We'll see them, get back on track maybe next year, but yeah, they kind of take a step back here.
Dang, now I feel like I should change my pick. I'm picking to go 6-6. Feel like I should change it to 5-7 only because I just want it to be the low one on Oklahoma State because this is what like year 3 of me selling all my stock on Oklahoma State. I knew that last year eventually the bottom was going to fall out because they too. I think they started like what 6-0, same as Key. They started 5-0.
Yeah, last year was 5-0.
They were 6-1 and then lost like their anyway. I'm like, they can't keep doing this. It's the Breaking Bad. He can't keep getting away with it. They lost 16 transfers out of Oklahoma State, including like their top 5 receivers, literally their top 5 receivers, and like, dude, their players are going to TCU, USC, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Baylor, Washington, Wisconsin. Like this, these weren't bad players. These were good players that they lost. Something's going on to Oklahoma State. Something has been going on to Oklahoma State. I will continue to sell my stock and hope that I'm ahead on this, like I was with Clemson for the time being. Oklahoma State 6-6. You're going 5-7. I'm not going to change my pick, but I feel like you're on the right side there. I would definitely lean under or going over with Oklahoma State. All right, West Virginia. West Virginia has a win total of 5.5. Is this the last year we see Neil Brown coaching the almost said Trojans, the Mountaineers?
Yeah. I don't think so. They got all 5 starters on the offensive line coming back. I feel decent about that. I mean, it's going to be a tough season. They play at Penn State. And then that game with Pittsburgh that we wanted so badly, it's still there. I think Pitt's probably going to take care of them pretty good. But all that being said, it's a proud program, and we'll see. I do have them taking a dip down, though. I have them going 4-8 this year. So, they're not going to be. I think it's tough to say that Neil Brown's going to be out. Just, I think he's allowed to have a couple stinkers before getting back on track. Hopefully, I think he's a good coach, and I think he can get them back on track. But I don't think this is going to be their year.
I mean, 5-7, 6-4, 6-7, 5-7. That's tough, man. They go 4-8. That'll be his worst record yet. But again, I love that Bud Elliott says this. You take the check, you take the losses, and that's West Virginia in the Big 12. I mean, look, at least they got Duck Wentz on the schedule. I'm just kidding. That's
Duquesne. Yeah, last year when you were trying to pronounce it for the Florida State opener, and I said it's Duquesne, and you're just like, "Are you sure, man?" That just I
just want everyone.
Up.
I just want everyone to go to the West Virginia schedule and look at their week 2 matchup, and you tell me, looking at that word on the paper, you tell me how you pronounce that word.
Yeah.
Oh man, dude, the schedule's brutal. You have your Big 12 schedule, then you get Penn State and Pitt at a conference. That's just, you're asking for West Virginia. What are you doing? You schedule 3 Duquesnes at a conference when you're West Virginia. You don't schedule Penn State and Pitt. You don't do it. As bad as I want that rivalry back, don't have a road game at Penn State.
It don't make any sense.
They're right now only favored in 3 games. I mean, it's rough, man. I'm going to go under with you. I'm also at 4-8 for West Virginia. Also at 5.5, we have a new team to the Big 12, the BYU Cougars. their first year in the Power Five officially. They were in the independent. They might call themselves Power Five, but now they're in the Big 12 in a conference. How are they going to fare in year one?
Yeah. Hold the phone. Keaton Slovis has transferred again and is their quarterback or projected quarterback for BYU.
Yes.
That's impressive. They're also bringing in 4-star transfer from Oregon, Harrison Taggart at linebacker, um, Deion Smith at running back um, from Colorado. So they've got some guys coming in that should help them. I'm pretty high, relatively speaking, because we get down to this level and we start to talk about, who's in, who's out. Looking at their schedule, Sam Houston in their out of conference, it's tougher than I want it to be, but they should be able to take care of Sam Houston in Southern Utah. They do play at Arkansas. I think that's a loss. Be a fun game to see, but they should lose that game. They get Texas and Oklahoma this year. For what it's worth, I think they're going to win 6 games. I like them at 6-6.
I think it's going to be a trend here for a second. Brutal first year in the Big 12. They're only favored in 3 games, 3-9. I'm going to go under the win total. I think it's a rough first year in the Big 12. Your home road splits are not great. Like, you get the away game out of conference against Arkansas, but then you get some of these games that are going to be like deal breakers for the season, like Kansas, West Virginia, Oklahoma State. Those games are all on the road on top of having to play at TCU and at Texas. The schedule's brutal. Like, again, Texas Tech, you get at home, but I'm putting them in a tier way above BYU this year. Same with Oklahoma. I think it's going to be a rough first year in the Big 12. I don't think that's forever, but 3-9 for the Cougs. Welcome to being in the conference, Cougars. Also at 5.5, Cincinnati. Also first year in the Power Five. They lose their head coach and then I think their entire roster. Their win total set at 5.5 though. Definitely a long way off from their win total the last few years. How do you feel about Cincinnati?
Well, they've got Emory Jones at quarterback. So
Thank God.
They've got a guy who's played some ball. Yeah, it's tough with these next two we're going to talk about, but it's just if the move happened 2 years ago for either one of these next two teams, but is the next team Houston we're about to talk about?
Yes.
Okay, so with Houston and Cincinnati, if both of them were to come into the Big 12 with each of the past 2 years, I think that they are up near the top. They're 8, 10 wins, both of them. That's how I feel about them. But they're both programs that need to be built up. Cincinnati, I mean, they have a history of being a place that you can win, but breaking in a new coach and losing one of the top coaches in all
the
football.
Sport. Yeah.
I mean, and he's going to a destination type job in the Big Ten. I mean, in Wisconsin. So losing Luke Fickell is just going to be huge. I don't think that's going to they're going to be able to recover from that. Scott Satterfield, jury's still out on him. We haven't really seen him elevate a program yet. He's kind of just piddled around with what programs are and who they are, and I guess he hasn't made them worse. So we'll see if he's able to do something with them. But yeah, Emory Jones potentially being the starting quarterback. You got to have someone to take snaps, so it's better than nobody. But 2 returning starters on offense, 6 on defense. I don't have a lot of high expectations for the Bearcats this year. I've got them at 4-8.
I'm with you on the under. I got them at 3-9. I think that Louisville's pretty happy that Scott Satterfield left for this job. I don't know if he was kind of told to leave or if he thought this is my way out now before I get fired. Probably the latter. Dude, they lost everybody. They had so many transfers out. Fickle left, took a big boy job in the Big Ten. Very deserving. Cincinnati will be back. They're not going to be a forever bottom dweller in the Big 12, but I think this is very bad timing for Cincinnati joining the Big 12 on top of a tough schedule. 3-9 for me as well, down there with BYU. All right, last team. Houston has a win total of 5. So lowest win total in the Big 12. Cougars, man, what are they going to do?
Yeah, after winning winning 8 games last year, having a good season. This will be a tough one. I losing your quarterback, Clayton Tune, who, since Derek King, which, that seems like forever ago, whenever he left, Clayton Tune takes over and really runs this Dana Holgorsen offense well, can run the ball, throw the ball, had a really good balance, a good pro prospect. Losing him, I think, is going to be tough. Donovan Smith takes over at QB. They've got 7 starters back on offense, 3 on defense. We'll see if they're able to overcome it, but they got Texas on the schedule. UTSA, Rice, and Sam Houston are their, out of conference. They're all those, small Texas teams. So we'll see if they're able to do it. But several of these other, at Kansas State's going to be very tough. At Baylor, obviously. Several of these teams, though, that are equal or close to them are circling them as a team that they want to beat. And especially because Houston is known for just kind of, they got that Houston money. And they've been wanting to be one of the big boys for a while. And I think they might take it on the chin a little bit this year, just based on reputation. I have them also at 4-8. So I don't think bottom necessarily fall out where they're going to be like a 2-win team, but they're not going to they're not going to go to a bowl game. And, I think of them similarly as Cincinnati. Like I said, if they would be able to transfer any of the past 2 to 3 years into the conference, then I think it'd be a much different showing, much more solid ground. But these are types of programs that need to build over the course of a couple of years, and they're just coming off of a cycle of being pretty good. So now they're going to be pretty bad. So that's just the name of the game.
Do you know they lost 9 offensive linemen? 9. Who's going to play?
You only play
line?
5, so I don't know.
Who's going to play offensive line for this team? Again, bad timing heading into the Big 12. They're going to get beat up on. Their win total's at 5. I'm going under. I'm also at 4-8. They're out of conference, a little bit easier than BYU, Cincy, West Virginia. So record might look a little bit better, but I think this will be the worst team in the Big 12 this year. Will be Houston in year 1 of the Big 12. We will be back next week. Next week we've got the Big 10. So we got a couple big ones coming up. Big 10 next week, SEC in 2 weeks for our previews. So be sure you're following us here at the Extra Point Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow him on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with a K. That'll do it for this edition of the Extra Point. He is Daniel. I'm Daniel.